The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Yeah. We should probably just go ahead and put this to rest. We played Punch Out.
Yes,
And Punch Out has a lot of terrible racist stuff we're going to talk about later.
It does. Yeah, I think that honestly, there's no way to. That is the thing that is the most stark thing about this game. Like, if you said to me, what are the core aesthetics of Punch Out? We could talk about mechanics, we could talk about sound, but really it's the racism. That is.
It's weird. Okay, we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
First, though, I want to ask you, particularly because I have such a Swiss cheese answer to this question. So I'm going to ask you first, did you play this game a lot as a kid? Was this friend's game, dad's house? What was your relationship to Punch Out? And I'll say this is Mike Tyson's Punch Out, because then they re-released it later and they had to pull all the Mike Tyson stuff out. So we went original.
Yes, OG, M to the T. For me, my nostalgia experience was I don't think that memory being what it is, but if I remember correctly, this was one that one of my friends had, and so we would play it at his house. But because of the nature of this game, which we'll get into later, I didn't really get to play it that much. I mostly watched them play. And then, the moment that I started to do poorly, the controller was wrested from my hands. And then so a part of me, when you suggested that we play this, I was like, yes, finally, a chance for me to redeem myself now.
Nope. So it's funny you should say that, because I know I didn't have this game growing up, which means I definitely played it at a friend's house. And yet, for some reason, I have this overwhelming feeling that I would be playing it, and then my brother would I have an older brother who would either take the controller from me, or I would hand it off to him I'm getting my ass beat, right? But the thing, I can't think of a specific memory. I just have this vague feeling that this was one of those games where I had to help me, please.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. I am glad that we doubled back and played it, because this is one where I definitely had vague memories of, and there's a tremendous amount of pop culture that circles around this. So, and they actually did a remake semi-recently, right?
Yeah, they did a Wii version.
Yeah. But,
and for some reason they included Little Mac in the latest Smash Brothers.
Huh.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have not stuck too close to Nintendo as the years have gone on. But yeah, so I was glad to go back and replay this, so that way I could say, oh right, this is what this reference is, so on and so forth. So that was positive. The rest of this was a glaring slog from which it seemed like there was no escape.
So I got to relive a horrible childhood nightmare.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it felt like being in a quicksand of unhappy. But visuals,
they're a thing in this game. They're actually I'm actually kind of surprised, because the startups, when you first boot this game up, it immediately goes to the game threatening you, right?
Yes.
So it's a picture of Mike Tyson, and it says Mike Tyson is waiting for your challenge. You don't even know what video game you're playing yet. There has been no title screen. As far as you know, this might be an 8-bit version of The Ring, and in 7 days, Mike Tyson's gonna chew your face off.
as he does that. You know what? Actually, I'd watch that movie. The Ring was good, but I would definitely watch Mike Tyson's The Ring.
I mean, that would, and where he is in his career right now, he might make that movie. I don't even think you'd have to get an impersonator or do a cartoon. I think you could just tell him, we're going to make a movie about you, where when someone starts up Mike Tyson's Punch Out, within 7 days, you eat their face. And he'd be like, yeah, definitely.
That seems like a good idea. And then all of a sudden, Mike Tyson's lawyer calls him up, or his accountant, and just basically says, so Mike, we've noticed you've been buying a lot of plane tickets. What's that? Well, okay, so I've got this deal, right, where I have to go eat people's faces. And it's like, whoa, let me get you on the phone with the legal department because that seems like it's got a whole host of problems.
I like that in this let's call this a fantasy. In this fantasy we are concocting that Mike Tyson's personal accountant finds out he has been eating people's faces because of his plane tickets, not because of the news coverage saying that Mike Tyson is going around somehow like a horror movie monster eating people's faces.
Well, in my mind, it's kind of like, so, I mean, in the movie The Ring, there wasn't, a whole bunch of news articles saying, hey, there's this VHS tape floating around, don't watch it because horror monsters kill you because nobody's going to believe that. So, so yeah.
But I mean, if Mike Tyson actually has to get on a plane and like walk into your house, I feel like people would be like, hey, is that Mike Tyson? And then he comes back out, 10 minutes later, like with blood all down the front of him. And it's like, oh, that's definitely Mike Tyson.
I didn't recognize him without the blood, but yeah, no, I think, I don't know. I just like the idea that like Mike Tyson gets caught the same way they caught Al Capone, with like weird financial.
It's like tax evasion and accounting errors. Yeah. So we've never done an episode of Nostalgia Goggles that didn't go violently off the rails, but this is approaching like record speed.
Well, yeah, to be entirely honest, there's in my opinion not a whole lot to this game, in the sense that like you it's kind of the same thing over and over again. So I pretty much walked into this one braced up for it to go off the rails regularly. So
90 minutes of bullshit.
Yep. And and we also played this game. But but for me, for the visuals, I think that we always have to split them up into two, like the visual and then how it serves the gameplay. So the visuals themselves, I think were actually surprisingly good because most of the time, especially for Nintendo, like they get away with the visual being very low res, basically, because they're not trying to render people. As we've said before, if they're far on the left side of the uncanny valley, then your brain just kind of fills in the details. But this time they are actually registering people, and I think that they look like people.
Yeah, no, it helps that every one of your opponents is a freaking giant monster.
Yes.
Because when Little Mac turns around at the end of a fight, his features are very simple. He has like 2 pixels for eyes. But because all of your opponents are gigantic behemoths so that you can see the way they're moving, which services the gameplay tremendously well, it also makes all of the character models look much better. Because, even the smallest person you fight, who's probably Glass Joe, him and Don Flamenco are probably about the same size, but they're huge. Like, their sprite is probably 3 or 4 times larger than yours, and they are not anywhere near the largest character.
No, I kind of assumed that this was a prelude to Attack on Titan. That everybody that you're fighting is like a 2 or 3 meter Titan. No, they are enormous compared to you, and I don't pretend to know a lot about professional boxing. Confident they're out of your weight class.
Well, okay, so this is actually something that I noticed because at first, when because we're critiquing this so much harder than I think you would normally critique something like this, and like I sat down and first guy comes up and I'm like, wow, he's big, but then okay, I get it, and then like you start fighting like more and more gigantic behemoth monsters, and I was like, well, I guess it's so like I can see what I'm doing. Because like in one of the arcade versions of Punch-Out, there was actually like you were just a wireframe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that you could like see through yourself to your opponent who was like more or less human sized. But here's the thing. In between fights, it shows you like who you are and who you're fighting. Mm-hmm. First off, for reasons I do not totally understand, Little Mac is listed as 17 years old.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know why they decided to throw in that underage bit.
Right. Why not 19? Why 17?
Yeah. Why is he 1/2 the size of these people and
And
underage.
a child.
Yeah. I mean, what mad fever dream is this? I don't know. Like that, but to be fair, if that was the only cognitively dissonant thing with the like the visuals and what's going on here, I would cling to it like a man, drowning, I would, oh God, that would be delightful if that was the only thing that was off about this game. Unfortunately, it was not.
Yeah. But I do agree with you that the characters are pretty, for this time in history, I would say like pretty visually stunning. Like every opponent is unique looking. They all have mostly unique animations. Like some of them they obviously crib from each other, but they're humans making similar body movements. Of course they do. So like they everything looks really good. There's clear animations from every single enemy. Like every enemy has a tell except one of Mike Tyson's punches does not have a tell, but all of his other punches do. So there's one punch in the entire game that doesn't have a tell. That's pretty like good, use of visuals to clue the player into what they need to do or not do.
Yes. Yeah, no, I definitely think that and then that leads us to visuals in service of gameplay. I thought the visuals were very solid in service of gameplay. As far as, that, like you said, every character had a tell. Most of the time, if they were about to throw a punch that you couldn't block, they would flash orange or whatever, red.
Yeah, they do like a supercharged punch.
Right. Yeah. So, like they clearly do a thing, pause for half a second to give you a chance for your brain to process it, and then execute. So, and all of those things are at least stark enough that I didn't fight any bad guys where I was just like, whoa, my God, where did that come from? I definitely got jawed a number of times, but each time it was because, I'd see them wind up and just either flub it, or my brain said, wonder where that fist is going to go. And then it just went right into my face, but yeah. I did feel that it was my fault.
You never feel like they're giving you an impossible task, which I think it's pretty fair that even with Mike Tyson, it's like his tell is really small. Like he just kind of like winks weird and creepily at you. Mm-hmm. But he only has one punch that doesn't have a tell, and he doesn't overuse it. So you're pretty much the entire game being coached toward twitch reflexes, right? Like character moves in a certain way, you dodge or you block or you counter punch or whatever, but it's I think you said it when we were talking about it this week, is like this game is essentially Simon.
It's a mixture of reflex tester plus Simon, where you just need to, and I think that's why the moment that I realized that, just you could hear the glass shattering in the background and my tolerance for the game plummeted, because what I remembered when I was, a kid was, oh, well, this game is fun because it's like being a boxer. And then when I was like, no, this game is a more frustrating, time-sensitive version of Simon, then I was just kind of like, this is awful. But that's kind of drifting more into gameplay. But yeah, as far as visual play, at no point did I feel, like you said, I didn't even get close to Mike Tyson, but I did feel.
Oh no! I'll just lay it out there. I fought Mike Tyson through the use of a passcode that I got on the interwebs. I also got nowhere near Mike Tyson.
Yeah, no, not even close. But that being said, everybody that I fought was very clear with their visuals. I do have some complaints with the way the game played. That really drifts more into gameplay. But here's the $1 million question. Do you want to get into the racism in the visuals, or do you want to get into the racism later?
I really feel like that's going to have to be its own section because unfortunately that is where the majority of my notes are hanging out.
Yeah. Because I just kind of wrote down from my notes is just all I've got is because I split them up into, visuals, sound, and then gameplay / other. Right. And yeah, like I've for visuals, I've just got racism, question mark. Like, whoa, yeah, and it definitely hits you just right in the face. But anyways, we'll get to that. But yeah, I thought that the one of the things that you've brought up before with games of this era was the horrible Cronenberg crowd.
Oh yeah, and there's a cool secret in there, but tell me about the Cronenbergs.
Yeah, in that there's no separation whatsoever. Like they are a giant undulating mass of
You know what they look like? They look like inside of the gate in Full Metal Alchemist, like just faces that are all like seamlessly connected to each other.
yes, yeah. No, I was gonna say that the one that came to me immediately was in Futurama, where they go to the demolition derby, right? And there's the horrible mass that is the Dixie Chicks. It's just like that, but on a larger scale, you know. But yeah, I like yours better, where it's all of the souls lost to the Philosopher's Stone.
Yep. Yeah, it's horrifying. There is unfortunately a reason you would look at the Cronenberg mass, which is, and I don't know if this was an accident or on purpose, but it is true that during certain fights, maybe all of them, but specifically during a few fights that I know of, before a character does a specific like the enemy does a specific thing, the audience does a specific thing. So if you are watching the audience, you can actually win a fight because like a camera flash goes off or whatever, or like a mouth opens or something in the audience. And it's like that only happens right before this other thing happens. And I don't know if those things are linked on purpose or not, but if it is, it's kind of an interesting design decision for the artist to say like, okay, we want to put more subconscious cues in here, like that the big uppercut that knocks you down is coming or whatever.
Right. No, that's really interesting. And I don't know because if I remember correctly, around this time in history is when subconscious subliminal messaging was super a thing, you know, and then a lot of that kind of got debunked and nobody really talks about it anymore. But yeah, so I mean that wouldn't surprise me if they're like, no, we need to put in some more subliminal messages to make the game easier. Or apparently, you know, at some point I'm just going to see a flash go off of the camera, and then you're not going to see me for 10 years, you know. Because like that's
you're just going to be going up and starting fights with people and eating their faces.
But yeah, no, that's really interesting. I particularly like it because that means that theoretically, right, you could win or at least tip the fight in your favor by not watching your opponent, but watching the audience. And I would love to see that actually happen in a boxing match where the guy's not looking at who he's fighting at all. He's just staring off to the right, like at the crowd and still just wrecking the other guy, you know?
That seems like something Muhammad Ali would have done at his height. Like, because he was just so good. So like he's just like looking at like some woman he's gonna cheat on his wife with in the audience. He was not a good man. Like he's just like looking at someone in the audience, and then like she winks at him, and then he just like knocks his opponent unconscious without even looking.
Yes. And this is kind of, I mean, I'm gonna shoehorn it into visuals, which is Mario's the ref.
He is, and it's adorable.
Yeah, he is. It's cute. I think, though, this further lends more credibility, or will continue to lend credibility to the theory that Super Mario Brothers, right? He saved the princess and saved the day, and then everything else, and then he became Mr. Satan, you know? So he's just like doing guest spots everywhere, and he's gotta pay the bills, you know? So yeah.
Picked up go-karting as a hobby and also plays board games and stuff. So I do have, because we praise the visuals pretty hard, minus the Cronenberg audience,
right.
But I do have two things in my notes where the visuals fell down spectacularly. One, I'm sure, is a bug. There's no way they did this on purpose. But when Little Mac gets his block knocked off, and then you're like press A to recover kind of thing, your shorts are the wrong color. And then like when like they turn gray, and then when you re-enter the fight, like suddenly they're green again. I don't know why that happens, but it's like it's it's like a glass shattering moment. Like when I noticed it the first time, I was like, huh. And then every time I got knocked down, I was like, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's that, which I'm, like I said, I'm sure there's just a bug. But then the in between scenes, the look on Doc and Mac's face is like they are staring in abject horror at something just off camera that we can never know about because we are not prepared for it.
Well, particularly Mac, like, or no, whatever, his trainer,
Doc.
Doc, right? So Mac like looks like he has been hit in the head one too many times, because the way I just always saw it, and obviously it's very low res, so it allows you to project a lot onto it. Was it? He's just smiling, He's just kind of like, yeah, this is totally the way my 17-year-old life is meant to be going. Like, I've got no frame of reference for what a normal 17-year-old is supposed to be putting up with. All of this is fine, but Doc is just kind of like, oh my god. Oh my god, he is just wrecking you. Like Doc is seeing all of the horrors that he has thrust upon Mac, and like his demons are actually like dancing in front of him on the stage. No, I definitely agree that I do not know what he is seeing, but it is a drug-addled, infused nightmare. Absolutely.
It's the perfectly round, lidless, unblinking, staring eyes, right? Like, because Mac looks different depending on how well you're doing. Like, if you've been getting your ass handed to you, right, he has like his eyes a little swollen, he looks a little bit different. But when you start the fight, and if you continue to do really well in the fight, he keeps the same giant-eyed, vapid, vacant grin on his face. And it's just like, what is happening just off camera? That they cannot reconcile. Like, they cannot believe that whatever they're seeing is actually happening. And how can it be that horrifying and yet still be like, okay, round 2 starting?
Yeah. I don't know that I definitely noticed Doc's like horror grin, but I just kind of, in my mind was like, what are you going to do? But yeah, no, I like the idea that he is actually staring at something that is precipitating that that look. With the what was it? One of the things that when you mentioned the shorts thing that I did notice is when you knock somebody else down and they're doing the 10 count, right? Your gloves change color. Which I was like, I don't know if that was done on purpose. In my mind, he was taking off his green boxing gloves, and so those were the wrist wraps. But I think that that's just glitchy. I don't think that was on purpose.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds like almost the same kind of glitch, but I can tell you the exact reason I didn't notice that is because I was trying to figure out if the way a character gets, like, if the way an opponent gets up is scripted or has something to do with the way you knock them down.
I agree.
And I'm almost positive it actually has something to do with the way you knock them down, but I was like intently watching them for patterns. So like Mac was like not even in my rearview mirror because I was staring at the opponent I had just knocked down.
Yeah, no, I think, and as far as like, is it scripted or not? If I had the patience, which I don't, or any desire, which I don't, I would want to go back and do like replicate trials to see if I could figure out, all right, well, the first time I did it, my health was at this, their health was at this was the time, this is the count that they got to. Because sometimes you knock them down, they just jump right back up. Sometimes you knock them down and they get to 9, but then that doesn't impact how much health they have when they get back up, or at least it didn't seem to. And then sometimes they get up and then fall back down and then get up, So yeah, all of that was, I mean, okay. So to be fair, and this strays in the gameplay a little bit, but I liked that because it definitely added tension, I mean,
well, it added tension and quite a bit of realism. I was like, oh, the way I'm punching them matters. It's not just that I got their health bar to 0.
Right. So yeah, no, when I know with one of the guys, whatever, the King Hippo dude, who just, oh man, he eats your line. He hits so hard, right?
Yeah, that he is the first character I think you fight that is like taking a blow now might completely end the match for you.
Yeah, no, that was rough. And also I think he's one of the first one that's more mechanically complex. But so I was just swinging for the fences, man. Like I'd been knocked down 3 times. I knew like if I got knocked down again, and I hadn't even knocked him down once, you know? So I was like, all righty, well, this one was a learning experience. But then I did knock him down, and Mario's like, 1, 2, 3. I'm like, yeah, okay. But then he got up to like 7, 8. I'm like, is this happening? Is he gonna stay down? And he did. I got on the first one, full 10 count. And I was like,
so that's actually that is unique to his character.
he always goes down because I did
he
fight
always
him twice.
Yes. And it's so we've played a lot of NES games, and I've found that NES games far more than Genesis and Super Nintendo games, I have to like look at something and I'm like on the internet and I'm like, what is, because I don't have like original manuals laying around. So sometimes I got to look something up and I'm like, what was happening here? And so while I was looking up something about the game in general, it was like blah, 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 King Hippo, this is his tell. And when you knock him down, he will not get up. New line, because he is obese.
Excellent.
That's not in the official manual, but like someone took the time to feel like that was the correct way to explain this.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that is a 2 on the scale of 1 to 10 that this game sets out as far as some of the racism. But we'll get to that.
It's coming.
It's coming eventually. Like it's gonna be the full, like hour and a half long episode. And at the very end, it's like, so how did it hold up? Like, oh, I thought thing A. Oh, there was racism, and it just gets to the end. So I thought all those visuals were good. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention on the visuals, and I'm just blanking on it now. But what was it? I thought, okay, this was just odd. Again, like so many of the choices they made with this game, but when you win one of your tour de forces or whatever, it shows you training with Mac, right? So he's on the bike and you're running behind him, right?
You're Mac, he's Doc.
Sorry, I'm gonna keep messing that up. I don't know why. I'm gonna keep messing that up, but I'm going to. Anyway, so you're training with Doc, right? And you're in a pink tracksuit.
Yeah.
It was just such a stark pink, like because I don't do a whole lot of running because that's awful. But generally when I'm out and about, I don't see too many people in bright pink tracksuits. Like that's just not really wildly common for me.
I'm gonna go with they just picked a contrast color. They were like, what's a color that's almost nowhere else in the game and that will contrast against the background? And remember, I don't know if you made it this far, but in between one of the other title fights, and where there's like minor, major, world. So in between major and world, you see that same scene again, but it's nighttime. So like the pink pops during the day and at night. So that was probably like a limited color palette decision, not a like men can wear pink too decision.
Yeah, because I mean, in a game that is so rife with stereotypes, I thought it was odd for them to break the mold there. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of this game, like I said, the visuals, honestly, do they hold up? Yeah, they're fine, But so many things about this game, I just feel like there were some decisions that they made that were really, really good. Some decisions that made no sense whatsoever. But I just don't feel that in many cases they all came together really well, Like, this game doesn't feel like a thought out masterpiece. It feels like there's a whole bunch of decisions that were made, and like there were like 4 different people working on it,
Yeah, it feels like they led with the mechanic, right?
Yes.
Someone, I really feels like someone said like, why don't we make a Simon game? And someone else was like, nah, that's boring. What if it was 2 guys punching each other? Incentivize that employee, right? Like it was, I really feel like they had a programming mechanic that they knew they could implement, and then they found wrapping paper to put on it, which I'm not complaining about. Like the limitations of the hardware at this time in history and just the sophistication of video game design was just not there, right? Hardware was limited. Video games were a new concept, or relatively new. So I don't really fault them for doing what they did, but I mean, we're kind of, burying the lead. Like it doesn't hold up amazingly well. Let's talk about audio.
Yeah. So audio again, for me, I don't have a whole lot of notes on this. There's there is music, like there's like the tile screen music, all of this sort of stuff. I'll let you mostly take point for this, but the one thing,
I'm just learning that like your brain just doesn't process music. Like you just
Nope.
like it hits your eardrums and your brain is aware that signals are happening, and it's just like I don't care about any of this.
No, unless it's like super memorable. For instance, like Mario, games like that. Mega Man, ones where it's like kind of iconic. What's that other game? The one that I really want to play.
Day of the Tentacle?
Day of the Tentacle, right. That music, those scores, I mean, I think they just released the 25th anniversary edition of it.
That sounds right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, like those I can pick up on, but like this one, I don't know. Like I remember, there being music at the start screen, but one thing I did pick up on that, again, I thought was kind of the nice fleshed out touch was the weird crowd roar, which we've touched on in other episodes. I think they pretty much just lifted that directly. I'm starting to wonder now if in all NES games, like there's just a generic crowd noise, because honestly, why reinvent the wheel,
Well, especially if they're first-party titles, right? So, like, if you're talking about games that were actually made by Nintendo, there's a very good chance that it was literally, like one programmer leaned back from his cubicle and like turned to the programmer next to him and was like, "Mary, do you have the crowd roar sound effect? I need it for this part of the game." And that Mary was like, "Here you go, John." And like, that's just, because I mean, it's not like, oh, well, that was made by EA and this one was made by Ubisoft and that was made by Envision. Like, I mean, most games at this time in history were made by Nintendo.
Right. So yeah, no, I mean, it's probably the exact same crowd effect. But aside from that, I'll let you take point on on music.
So there's one thing that I noticed, and I at first I was a little irritated about it, and then the more I played, the more I was like, no, this feels like the right decision to me, which is when each opponent is introduced, it plays like introduction music.
Yeah.
And they're not all unique. They do actually have one little riff that they use once, three times. I don't think it's just twice. I think it's three. It doesn't matter. But like, first off, we cannot discuss this without talking about some of the racism, because this is where it starts.
Yep.
But the actual fight music is the same for every fight.
Yes.
Which I kind of liked, because it's fairly subtle music, and it's like a jaunty little tune. It's like a little battle music from an RPG or something. But I like that when I'm fighting, King Hippo, I'm not overwhelmed by his music compared to like Piston Honda, or like the fight is about the same, which makes it feel in a weird way a little bit more realistic. Like, I'm in a boxing ring, I'm in a stadium where there's a crowd roar, and this person would not have a Bluetooth speaker in their back pocket playing their theme music the whole time.
Here I am, rock you like a hurt. Yeah, no, that'd be distracting.
Yeah, and I could see why they would want to go with a video gamey, like, oh no, everyone, the jungle guy, his ring is jungle themed and he has jungle music, and then the urban guy, his ring is like city themed and he has like hip hop music, and like I could see why they would want to do that, but I'm really glad that they didn't, because it just would have been like distracting and annoying.
More so than it already was. And I'm glad that they drew the line somewhere with the racism, where they were like, well, and to be fair, if I remember correctly, there was a WWE Nintendo title or something like that.
Oh, there's been tons of those games.
So, I mean, I could imagine an executive somewhere being like, oh, yeah, and then each ring would be different, and there'd be like all of its own music and all this and all that, and somebody being like, no, it's WWE. We've got that. We've got that game. This is not that. We're trying to do a boxing thing. But each, like you did touch on, each person does have their own little intro, and
yep,
that's pretty racist.
Yep. So before we get into this, the one other thing I'll say to just kind of connect the visuals and the audio is there are not a lot of secrets to the way Little Mac fights. But there is one thing where you can earn stars, and you need to have stars to use your uppercut. You're like super uppercut. So when you hit someone in a way that you get a star, the visual is almost identical, like their like reaction to getting hit. But there's a little tiny star, and it goes away super fast, but it makes like a little sparkle noise.
Yes.
And if you are, depending on your play style, that sparkle noise is friggin' crucial, because the place on the screen that I was looking at was not a place that I regularly saw that little star show up, but I heard the little sparkle noise every single time it happened.
Right.
So like there aren't a lot of sound effects in the game, right? It's mostly the like charge up noise when your opponent's going to do a big hit, the hit noise, the miss noise, and like the music, right? Like there aren't a ton of sound effects in this game.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, and we can, yeah, this strays a little bit more into mechanics, but like the star things like that, I thought there was very, very poor conveyance in the sense of like I honestly now even don't know what like that star was for. I never used it.
Yeah,
but anyways,
we'll that.
Yeah, that strays into mechanics. But yeah, I did like that. I did. Yeah, I liked that the sound effects were very clear and crisp, you know? So I knew if, even without looking at the screen, if the guy swung and hit me or swung and missed, you know? So that in conjunction with the visual, which is pretty stark, it was very clear whether you were winning or losing. And man, I did a lot of losing. I don't know. Poor Mac. He ain't pretty no more.
So this is where the weird cultural choices really leap out at you, because I could see skipping a lot of the flavor text and stuff from the characters, and they don't look overwhelmingly racist if you compare them to like Looney Tunes and like I mean, they are super racist, but like the visuals are consistent with other terrible like American visuals from this kind of point in history. But the point that made my eyebrows like just lift right off of my head is the third person you fight is Piston Honda, which is kind of clever, because I mean Honda's not an uncommon Japanese name,
right?
And piston is like a way to describe someone who has like a strong jab, like fires like a piston. But piston is also a car word, and a Honda's a car brand, and that doesn't feel like an accident, right? Like that just feels like somebody who was on the translation and localization team was like, I am so clever. But when he comes out, it literally plays the stereotypical like nee 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 nee, and I'm like, so I'm sitting playing this, and Susan is behind me on the couch reading a book, and she just goes, "Whoa!"
Oh man, yeah, no, because who's the first person you fight is Glass Joe, right?
Yeah, Glass Joe, and then Von Kaiser, and then Japanese McJapanese.
Right, and so they almost like ease you into the racism because Glass Joe is just innocuous American person, right? So playing it as an American, right? I was like, oh, okay, and so he comes out, and I don't really remember what his intro music was.
He has the music that they use like 2 or 3 other times. It's like, I guess it's the American guy music.
Yeah. So he comes out, and it's like, all right. I was like, all right, that was fine. I'm kind of getting the feel for it. And then all of a sudden, Kaiser von Luftwaffe the Fourth. I mean, like he comes out, and it's like dun na 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 na, and I was like, that's a little on the nose. But all right. And then Piston Honda comes out, and I was like, oh no, that was the last one was not an outlier. That is a harbinger for things to come.
Yeah. Well, and then so that's the end of the minor circuit. Then you move into the major circuit, where the first guy you fight is Don Flamenco, who has a rose in his mouth, and it plays the like stereotypical like and I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, that and the way, and this is a kind of a visual, but the way he moves, all of it is, everything about him is just dripping with stereotype, right? Because he's very flamboyant and, you know, dancing around, and like even his little jabby jab move is very dancey, you know. Now I kind of want to see, you know, like I think they did a Dirty Dancing but Latin version of it somewhere.
Yeah, there was like a 20 years later sequel or something.
Yeah, something like that. But, you know, where basically a cover art of like a Latin romance novel, but with Don Flamingo like on the front, because, oh man, everything about that was just, and then at that point, it's just, again, glass shattered, you know, so now you see all of it. And then like King Hippo comes out and he's Hawaiian, right?
Hang on.
I don't know why something's somewhere.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, he is from what I assume is the fictional Hippo Island, and it just says South Pacific.
So, yeah.
Yes, he's supposed to be like Samoan, I guess.
Yeah. So,
but his music is actually kind of neat. It's almost like a boss fight in a classic video game. It's definitely not what I would think of if they were trying to parody like island music.
No, I don't remember his music being particularly awful. I remember everything else about him being particularly awful. But yeah, no, he was probably one of the lesser racist ones. Like as far, but again, once the glass is shattered, you're now not, instead of like glazing over some of the racist stuff, you're honed right in on it, you know? Because, and what really doesn't help is if you assume that he is the not racist cream filling, he's sandwiched by Don Flamingo and what was it? The Great Tiger?
Great Tiger.
Yeah. Who is, I mean, full disclosure, that's where I rage quit, but also, I mean, just mind-blowingly racist. Because again, Troglodyte Ears, I don't remember his music, but I remember he teleports into the middle of the stage.
Yeah. and he's wearing a turban that like his tail is the jewel in his turban flashing.
And if I remember correctly, Doc says that his father was a great
magician.
I mean, why? Just come on. God. Yeah.
So all right. So I'm gonna take a step back for a second because all these characters have like culture. Let's say an attempt at culturally appropriate music and theming, and I feel like this is not super okay. Like if I was part of one of these groups, I'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah,
like not every Spanish person is a flamenco dancer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, so, okay. My opinion, none of this is okay. This is not okay. You know?
I mean, I'm trying to be cognizant of being offended on someone else's behalf, but this all feels pretty offensive.
Yeah.
I'm not telling anybody else how to feel, but I was constantly like, oh my God.
Well, I was just, so, I mean, you know, obviously each person in the world comes from their own culture, right? So whenever you're immersed in another person's culture, you know, there's always that question of, is this correct or a bad parody? For example, like Luke Cage, right? That's, you know, very, very steeped in, you know, like Black culture, right? And there were a number of times where like something would happen and I'd be like, I don't know if that's offensive just because it's not what I grew up with. And I don't know if that's accurate or a stereotype, right?
Yeah.
All of this was a stereotype. Like I can,
yes,
it was almost a paint by numbers stereotype, you know, where it's just kind of like, oh, well, he's Indian. He's got to have a turban, got to have something about, you know, like tigers and stuff, and got to the magic and teleporting. And
yeah,
I don't want to be on this planet anymore. It just,
Yeah, it's surprising that, because I mean I this is Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and I don't have my detailed research notes in front of me.
Or did
But
you
I'm
just
kind of
forget 'em?
wondering.
I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
you did the research, but
Oh no, I mean I have them.
Yeah.
Obviously. I'm wondering if was this a game made by Nintendo of America, because Japan, in my experience with their culture, is like pretty okay about making fun of themselves, but I don't know what their kind of tolerance for making fun of other cultures is. But America, I mean, it's America. So like all of these design decisions feel like they could have been made by Warner Brothers Studios, right? Like somebody finished drawing and writing a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and then they just walked across the hall into Nintendo of America and were like, okay, obviously there's going to be a Russian guy who drinks a lot. Obviously there's going to be a Spanish guy. He's going to be a flamenco dancer. Obviously the Indian guy's going to wear a turban. I don't think all Indians wear turbans. This one does because he's representative of all Indians. It's like that feels, as an American, like it feels like those design decisions would have way more believably come out of American studios than out of a Japanese studio. But I honestly don't know.
I mean, same here. I can only venture a guess, and again, because we know and are familiar with the racism of our culture, and very less so with the racism from other cultures. That being said, I did read an article one time of some deeply, well, I want to say, like horrifying, like the kind of the horror funny where you're like, oh no, like that kind of funny.
Yeah, like laugh to keep from crying funny.
Yeah, exactly. Schadenfreude funny. But yeah, I don't know.
No,
Like,
that one doesn't seem right.
but anyways, from Japan, where I like just casual racism in like PSAs and things like that. So I don't know. I don't know if it came out of Japan. There was one thing that I noticed that I don't know if it was just something where I was just kind of correlation doesn't prove causation, but I just thought it was interesting, which is that, as you mentioned in the visuals, when you wail on the other dude, they will be messed up during the timeout, right?
Yeah, the in between rounds. Yeah,
right. So the Piston Honda, like, so for instance, like Don Flamenco and all of these other guys, they'll normally have something over their eye or like a huge cut or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Piston Honda only has like a Band-Aid across, like, if I remember correctly, or his you beat him up face is barely different than his normal face, and it's very like, oh, he's not really that hurt. And I was just kind of like, I don't know. I just noticed that, where I was just kind of like, I wonder if this was kind of a Japanese thing where they said, well, the Japanese character doesn't get hurt as bad or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely believe something like that being not snuck in, but I mean, like, if I'm making design decisions, I could see doing that by accident and on purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I either accidentally place my culture above the other cultures, or I intentionally would place my culture above the other cultures. Like, I could imagine them doing something like that. What I can tell you for sure they probably did not do on purpose was the localization of his flavor text. There's no way I would believe that what they say in the English version of the game is what he says in Japan.
I blanked it out. What does he say again?
So I have this for later, but we've come to it, so I'm gonna just.
No, we're in the racist part. We're in the racist part of the show.
I do want to talk about controls and mechanics a little bit, but like, please also don't ever describe a section of the show as the racist part of the show.
Well, yeah, no, I don't think that this should be a recurring portion of the show. Like, we don't
not a returning segment.
Yeah, we don't need to consistently carve out, for like Yoshi's Island, the racist part of the show.
So in between round 1 and round 2, and I think again between round 2 and round 3, if it goes that far, Little Mac gets his little pep talk from Doc or whatever, depending on how you're doing. And Piston Honda's reply is, and I am quoting directly here, "Sushi, kamikaze, Fujiyama, Nippon Ichi," which is Japan #1.
Eh,
Yeah.
why?
It hurts. Like someone, it's not even a sentence. It's just a list of Japanese sounding things.
No, it's just word salad. It's just, it's like the implication that he doesn't speak English well. It's just,
Yeah,
can't.
I don't. Yeah. And that was one of those things where, again, Sue is behind me on the couch reading a book and I'm sitting here playing. And I literally put the controller down and turned to her and I was like, put your book down. I need to explain this to someone.
Yeah. No, and to me personally, the horrifying, because okay, so the thing that I think hits me the hardest about this is the casual race. It's casual racism, which to me not a lot of, I don't know. Being straight white male, I don't deal with racism being levied at me very often. So I am doing my best to speak educatedly about an area where I've been rarely the victim. So, please, everybody who's listening to this, take this with a grain of salt, with the fact that we're doing our best to address a subject that we haven't been on the butt end of very regularly. But that being said, is to me, I think that casual racism bothers me a lot because it's way more insidious, in the sense that it normalizes it, right? So the idea, like you said, where it's like, oh, well, the Indian guy has to wear a turban because all Indians wear turbans, period, done, moving on. It's like, well, no, for any number of reasons. First of all, they wouldn't let him wear that during a boxing match, period, but even if for some reason he was allowed to, that can be a part of somebody's culture independent of their race, so all of that bothers me. So then like things where they just keep hammering home this insane racism, to me really casts a pall on the game altogether. Like I first of all, the game in and of itself does not have a strong degree of story or depth of mechanic to make it wildly engaging. And then that they layer on a nice thick, creamy layer of racism on top of all of it. I'm like, man, you took something that was mediocre to begin with and then made it way worse. And now a part of me is like, why is this remembered so fondly?
I think old stuff gets a weird pass in. It's kind of like the victors write the history book, and because at least in the United States, for that time in history is like, when Reagan was in charge. So it's like, oh, well, that was then. Like, we wouldn't make a boxing game with characters like that today, except they did because they've remade this game. But
right, like, part of me wants to play the remake just to see how they dealt with any of that.
Yeah, and I think this probably would not have even occurred to me if this had been like a WWF game, right? Or whatever they call it now, a wrestling game, because it's like, oh, that person is not supposed to be representative of all Japanese people. That's their character.
Right.
But boxers don't do that. Like, to have a boxer come out to like your very stereotypical music, or to have the brown guy, of course, has to wear a turban because all brown people wear turbans. Like, it's like you're implying that is who that person is and that they are representative of people that look like that, not like, oh, it's the guy who's, a construction worker and he hits people with chairs because that's his character. Like, that's a wrestling thing where there's characters. Boxing, not known for those kinds of characters. So that's why it feels like I don't think I've ever used the term casual racism before, but I like what you're getting at, where the people who were making these design decisions were obviously like, well, yeah, of course. Yeah. And no one in the room said, no, not of course.
Well, and I think that you hit on something which I agree with, which is that in video games, really in any art, right, in any medium, but in video games as well, you have to be careful about what your lack of saying things is saying in addition to what you are saying. So, for example, if you had the Indian character who has the turban and the cat pelt strewn over him because of course, and father's a magician, all this sort of stuff, yeah, that's a very strong stereotype. But then if you could somehow, by using like story elements, turn that stereotype around to say like, oh, well, no, the reason why he's doing this is because he believes that that's what this culture expects of him. So therefore, that's why he's doing it. And, maybe throw it back or anything like. But none of those elements are present. That's not what this game's about. This game is very heavily mechanics driven, not story driven, which is totally fine. I enjoy lots of mechanics driven games. There's one particular one where a guy basically gets a sword from a cave and then just parties around the map for a while. What was it?
Speaking of which, because we are technically still talking about audio in the game, you didn't make it to Bald Bull, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so he was the first one who like truly laid me out, where I actually had to look up like what his mechanic was and how you're supposed to deal with it, which I didn't feel bad doing because it's like you're talking to your friend and you're like, hey, I'm having trouble with Bald Bull. And they're like, oh, when he does this thing, you got to do this. But like I still have to do it because it's Simon the game in boxing wrapping paper. So like I didn't feel too bad looking some of that stuff up. But when he beats you to death, which it feels like that's what he's doing because you like disappear off the screen. But his like you lost animation is he kind of like hunkers down. So he's like squatting and his arms are like sort of flexed down. And he laughs and it is, I would put money on this Ganon's laugh. Like when you die in the original Legend of Zelda and it shows Ganon and it goes like, like it is that, if not verbatim, like they cribbed it so hard, they might as well have just stolen it verbatim. Because when he beat me, I was expecting, like the next thing I expected to hear was like, duh, no. Like I was really, really taken out of the Punch Out moment for a minute.
Yeah, that's an odd thing for them to, kind of steal. Basically, it's like, well, when this character kills you, Ganondorf. Okay, now when it's what an odd choice. But yeah, so like you said, is that with because we know nothing else about this character and all of them, you basically therefore are, and because it is, as you mentioned, in a forum where when you're a boxer, you just walk out there I walk out there as George, not as, George, the destroyer of worlds and, like lightning bolts across my face and all that fun stuff, So you have to assume that what they are wearing and how they are comporting themselves is who they are. And if it is a blatant stereotype, then they are a stereotype. And that's just, yeah, like I said, I just don't, I don't care for the fact that, it's just kind of like, oh, well, yeah, this just exists and is a thing. And it's like, it's not. And it's reinforcing that kind of normalization is okay. And that kind of bugs me. So,
yeah.
And the game's horribly frustrating. I don't like it from that standpoint.
Well, yeah, there is definitely also that. So I do want to talk about mechanics and the controls a little bit because this game had another thing in it that I had to like kind of annoyingly look up, which was, so you said you didn't figure out how the stars worked.
Correct. And to be fair, just real fast, I approach this from the point of view of, because we discussed this briefly off the air where you said like, okay, well, you would look stuff up because, you were talking to your friends about it or reading about it in Nintendo Power or something like that. I wanted to come from it from the point of view of assessing the game's conveyance, so just what does the game tell me, not what I have to mine from friends. So I didn't look anything up about this game when I was playing it because I wanted to learn through the game teaching me. So
which is fair. And the reason that I looked this specific thing up is because, like I said, I don't have original manuals laying around for most of the games. And I wanted to pause it and I couldn't. Do you know why?
Why?
The start button is how you uppercut.
What?
Yeah, but only if you have stars. That's what the stars do. When you get a star, you can throw your powerful uppercut, which you do with the start button, which is, I mean, I've been playing video games for a long time. I cannot think of another game. There may be some I've played, but I cannot think of another game where the start button was a core mechanic controller. I mean, other than pause.
Yeah, no, I think the start button was ubiquitously pause all the way up through this last generation of consoles,
I mean, it has the word start in it. Like,
Yeah.
you're starting the game, like, press start to do new game or press start to stop the game. So like start, stop.
Right.
Like, like play pause on a tape cassette player.
Exactly. I mean, that button's the same because it's like mutually exclusive. You don't need two different buttons for that because you would never need to both be hitting the start and stop button at the same time. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, no, I would have never thought of that ever because it'd be literally like somebody walking up to you and saying like, hey, listen, just so you know, on your microwave, you've got time cook, you've got express cook, and then also it turns your food into solid gold nuggets, but only if you hold the pound button and the popcorn setting at the same time. Never.
Yeah,
no.
would not have guessed that. Don't know why that's built in. Yeah. And I mean, it makes me wonder, like, I mean, I know the Nintendo controller has but two little buttons on it, but it's just weird that they didn't opt for like A and B together or like down and B or something.
Yeah. I mean, down and B, I don't think down and B did anything, right?
Well, when you're holding down, you're blocking. So
Right.
you can't punch when you're blocking. So they could have just modified that behavior. And it's like you block and it's like your wind up and then you throw the uppercut. Like I just can't imagine what the discussion was like where the end result of that discussion was start button. Well, that's lunch. Like,
Yeah.
just really bizarre to me.
No, that is insane. And that does, lead us into the thing I really deeply want to complain about, which is the conveyance on this game is hot garbage. Just white hot, awful, hate, so frustrating. So because okay, it doesn't at any point, so it does kind of give you an idea of like what you're trying to do, but it doesn't do that really, in my opinion, in any unique or creative way. It puts you in a boxing ring with an opponent. Clearly your goal is to outbox your opponent,
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't know what boxing is, your opponent hits you and it's like, oh, if I push buttons, I take a poke at them, this must be a punching thing.
Right. So, and that's the thing is that, I was like, okay, I hit A or B and that makes me punch, and I hit side to side, that makes me jump side to side. All right, that's cool. It wasn't until the second or third person where punching does not get the job done ever. You have to be able to uppercut. That after slogging with that person for about 5 minutes, which feels like 50 forevers, was I just kind of like, none of this is working. I have to try other stuff. And so then I eventually was like, well, what if I hit up and punch and say, oh, that makes me uppercut? That works in this situation.
I could see why that animation looks like an uppercut. You are actually jabbing. So
well, that's stupid.
So if you A or B punch, you left or right body blow, and if you up A or B punch, you left or right jab. So basically high punch, low punch.
Okay. That makes a little bit more sense just because I was really impressed with how quickly I was able to throw several uppercuts in quick succession.
Yeah, they're jabs.
But yeah, so all of that being said, and then where I had my rage quit moment was with Great Tiger. So first of all, the super punch, never used it. Still don't know what that was. It took me a little while to figure out that the hearts were not were stamina basically, and how I was losing stamina because that's a metric like in the upper left-hand corner. And I'm not keeping my eye on that. I'm keeping my eye dead center in the screen where my opponent is. And so at one point, I just all of a sudden started flashing red and couldn't punch, which was a terrible time to find that out because I was trying to punch and I got laid out. So no warning, no, just, and it also was like, blam. I was like, oh, good, giddy God. So that was frustrating. But then with Great Tiger, when he does his I assume it's the multi-form technique.
Yeah, yeah.
Or it's Goku's after image. It's one or the other.
Yeah, it's more like the after image.
Yeah, but when he does that, like I still don't know how to counter that. I'm assuming that I have to hit block and then like in quick succession because
Yes. That is exactly what you have to do. And it took me a couple times of him knocking me down to figure out, oh, when you're blocking and you take a hit, you stop blocking. So you have to block again.
Yes. And the thing that frustrated me the most about that was two things. One is that there's very little safe space to figure that out because I did it, and then all of a sudden I was like, block the first one, which, again, when he first starts bamping around, I didn't block regularly because you still take some damage from that. I would dodge, and that doesn't work at all.
Nope.
Right? So I was like, okay, maybe it's block. And I blocked the first one. I was like, yeah. And he was like, bam, 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 down, you know? Like, he doesn't lit up. He lays you out, you know? So now I'm basically down a life fighting this guy. And so by the time I started to get the feel for the fact that when I pressed down and they hit me and I immediately had to quickly press down again, like I completely lost. And he is the third match. So if you lose against him a couple of times, you have to slog through quite a bit to get back to the part that you failed at, which is a horrifying cycle time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little surprised there aren't passcodes after each fight. It's only after each.
Why would there be?
It's only after each title fight. And the thing is, the minor circuit is only 3 characters, the major circuit is 4 characters, but then the world circuit is 6 characters.
Yeah. So I mean, imagine getting to and to be fair to the game, this was very common around this time.
True.
But that being said, it's still awful, and I hated it. But I mean, especially so. What was it? Hang on, it was a 10-digit code. Yeah, a 10-digit code. Now, you know way more about this sort of stuff than I do. But that being said, I cannot imagine that because they give you one after each circuit. To me, that would be a 3, like a 1-digit code, right? Because if you enter in the number 1. Then that would be after the first match.
So I can actually explain this if you're curious.
Please.
Okay. So there's 2 things that are happening here. One is you do not want the codes to be guessable. So they have to be non-intuitive. So if entering a 3 puts you after the third guy, like that's not good because then you just find out how many guys there are and you put 1 less than that and now you're at the end. So they usually are rooted in logic, but then there's some way that like it's like logical digit and then garbage. But the garbage has to be specific garbage that you aren't likely to guess. And then the other thing is that part of the reason the code is so complicated is because it's not just tracking how many dudes you've knocked down, it's how did you knock them down? So you can TKO or you can knock out, and you can lose a fight and then come back and win. So the code actually also includes like your win-loss record.
Right, which is what I figured was it was also tracking your win-loss. I didn't think about it tracking how you won or lost, right? But even still, I think you can get that knocked out in about 5 digits, not 10. But But that being said, and this kind of is an interesting concept. So I get the idea of you don't want it guessable because you don't want people to just be, I want to fight this guy. But why? You know, why not have it be, you know, like, okay, well, you know, you, especially if it tracks your win-loss record, right? You know, so you could say like, I got, you know, through all of the circuits, all TKOs and 0 losses, right? But why not if I want to sit down and like hone my skills on, you know, whomever, Mike Tyson, can I just not enter in a 9 and try fighting Mike Tyson? It just won't register that as a circuit win.
So my, and I mean, we're digging way deeper in than I think they probably thought about this stuff at this time in history, but my pushback there would be what you just described is a really crappy level select screen, not a good passcode system. Like a good passcode system encodes a lot of information into a non-guessable password that you get when you accomplished a set number of goals. What you just described is a level select screen. Like,
Yes.
choose the person you want to fight or do title mode where you go through all the fighters. And that would be awesome and should absolutely be present. You should be able to do that.
But I think, and I got a little off message here too, which is that the original moral of my story is with a 10-digit password, I think there's enough of them to select the guy, not the beginning of the whole,
Oh yeah, I mean that's a design decision. That's not a technical limitation. They, for whatever reason, they chose to make the game work that way.
Exactly, which I honestly think was just, and again, this was common at the time, was to increase I'm going to say it the nice way, which is to increase the lastability of the game, which basically means to waste your fucking time. So they wanted you to sink a whole bunch of time into this game. So it's like, oh man, it totally took me 5 hours to get through this game. It's like, yeah, well, it would have taken you a lot less time if you could just keep working on the thing that was challenging you, as opposed to having to go back through and slog through things that you've already beaten. Again, very common with games this era. Particularly frustrating going through the racist forest. So,
yeah, that's like that's an area they replaced with the Lost Woods, and they're like, and then you have to get the Master Sword from the racist forest. The where? The Lost Woods? Yeah, let's go with that one. Let's pretend that's what you said the first time.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Steve just shuffles out. It's like, you got my eye on you, Steve. Like that's strike 2. I don't want to get back into the last thing that you did because we're still cleaning that up, but this is 2.
One more of these, and we are demoting you to character design in Punch-Out.
I like that as his punishment, and then that's how Punch-Out. No, that's headcanon accepted. That's how Punch-Out became so awful. Was that Steve was on a good game like The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, which we should totally play sometime. But and then he got demoted to Punch-Out, which is actually a system behind.
Well, he could have been on the original Legend of Zelda.
Oh yeah, okay.
I don't know why you did like a whole generation evolution in there. I mean, I guess if this racist guy named Steve we made up may also have a time machine, he might. We don't know.
Maybe there was no racism before Steve. Maybe
he just traveled throughout time spreading racism.
Damn it, Steve.
It would be a guy named Steve.
Yeah. No, now hopefully all of our listeners, the next Steve that they meet, it's like, Steve.
Or if we see a massive drop off in listenership after this, it's going to be like, who knew we had so many Steves that were listeners?
and really intolerant of their name being used in a jovial capacity. One of the things that, and this is such a minor nitpicky thing, and I may be wrong on this, so please correct me. KO means knockout.
Yep.
TKO means technical knockout. Correct? Okay. So a knockout means that the person is unconscious or unresponsive.
Or the ref is saying you're not allowed to fight anymore.
Right. Well, that's why as the technical knockout means that they just can't fight anymore. Like they're not unconscious, but they can't pull their selves together to fight.
I do not. Well, okay. In the world of Punch-Out, the difference seems to be once you have beaten someone to the ground enough, the ref is calling the fight.
Right.
So that person may actually be able, because I noticed this, because this is how I won almost every single fight that I won was by TKO. So I would knock them down, and if you knock them down 3 times in a round, when Mario comes out, he immediately says TKO, which to me is the ref saying, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas a knockout would be unable to continue for, like they're literally unconscious or they're staggering and unable to function. Whereas a TKO, at least in the world of Punch-Out, seems to be the ref saying like, I am calling this. You are not allowed to keep punching this person in the face. So I don't know how that correlates to real boxing, but I think it's at least similar.
Yeah, I mean, very possible. The only reason why is because I remember as a kid being wrong about this. As a kid, I thought TKO was like total knockout, and I don't know how you could knock somebody out harder than unconscious. Like, there's a knockout where you're unconscious, and a total knockout where your brain is missing now. I don't know, but
yeah, you're just dead, totally knocked out forever.
Yeah. This is a tangential story, but it's something I've used a number of times, which is back in the day before we became close friends, I never used to put my computer through its shutdown process. I would just turn it off. And you at one point said, you got to stop doing that, man. That's really, really bad for the system. I was like, what? Off is off. And you said, it's the difference between you falling asleep and me knocking you unconscious. And that was such a great analogy. And I use that regularly now. Whenever people are like, oh, yeah, I just turned this off. I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like in my like little brag file of like things I'm proud of that I contributed to the popular culture, that's pretty high on the list.
No, it's very, very well done. But the reason why was because at one point I was fighting one of the guys, and I laid this dude out, right? And Mario came out and he's like, TKO. I'm like, that guy is he is unconscious. He is not, that was not a technical knockout. He is, what is it? I just made orphans out of his kids. Well, but he has a wife. Well, I assume that she died of loneliness, Is
that Futurama?
That is Simpsons, Dredrick Tatum.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to make orphans out of your children.
I like Homer Simpson. I have nothing against him as a person, but I am going to make orphans out of his children.
I assume that she will die of grief.
Oh, the Simpsons. But yeah, so that was just my own little nitpick on that, where I was like, no, that was, don't credit where credit's due, Mario. That man is barely alive. That is a knockout.
Yeah, it's the only way it's a technical knockout is like you are technically correct, the best kind of correct. Like he is technically knocked out, the best kind of knocked out.
But anyways, so I don't know if you have anything else on mechanics.
The one other thing I want to say about the controls, and we don't have to drag this out too much, but I was actually, because this game is essentially Simon, right? It's that kind of like call and response game. I was actually pretty impressed with the way the controls are balanced, because your opponents can do like 50 different things. They have like uppercuts and like powerful uppercuts and jabs and powerful jabs. And then like they all have their little special techniques, and like Hippo, you gotta like, he has a little mechanic where you gotta like make him drop his pants so you can like punch him in the stomach. And like there's all these things the enemy can do that you can't. And I think that was the right way to go. Like you can body blow left, you can body blow right, you can jab left, you can jab right. And if you have a star, you can uppercut. That is, well, and dodge. But I mean, like that's it, right? Like there's no, it's not Street Fighter. It's not Mortal Kombat. There aren't complicated button combinations. Like it really is Simon in boxing wrapping paper. And I actually think that's a good way to do that. Like don't give me a Simon board that has 85 buttons on it, and also sometimes I have to hit them in complicated combinations. Like there's a reason Simon only has 4 buttons, because it's not the number of buttons that's supposed to be the challenging part.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And I'd also say that the controls were pretty tight as far as like responsiveness, So
there's a fun side story for you. So this is how I found out one of my controllers was broken. Not like like I'm angry at the game, but like I pushed A and I actually felt the button stick in the plastic, and I was like, oh no. So like halfway through my playthrough, I actually had to switch controllers, and it didn't make me play like massively better, but I was like, well, at least it doesn't feel like I'm playing through peanut butter anymore.
Yeah, like one of the things that that it did that I thought was particularly good was so when you're wailing on the dude, like during your straight jabs or whatever, right? There was a number of times where I accidentally rolled the because you have to hit up, but I rolled it to the right, so my character dodged right. So the controls were very responsive, because it didn't take much of me tweaking it to the right to actually have him dodge right, which is good. That's what you want. especially I would rather the dodge be super sensitive and, like more sensitive than the up button, because
Yeah.
if I tried to dodge and it was like, oh, you didn't hit it quite hard enough, I'd be like, yeah, that's obnoxious. But even when I rolled to the right, his delay on coming back at me was long enough that I could get back in and get back into my cycle of getting my 5 jabs before he got his life together, So, so I thought that the controls were pretty tight. I thought that like I said, to me, even the mechanics, as you said, were simple and in service of the game. To me, it's just the way the game conveyed to you. I thought it was they did a great job saying you have a limited number of tools. You have, a screwdriver, a hammer, and like that's it. You got like these 5 tools, but then how to use them to solve the puzzle, I thought was just conveyed very poorly.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you said about cycle time really stands out because, like, to me, so with Bald Bull, he doesn't bamf about the world the way Great Tiger does. What Bald Bull does is he jumps away from you and then he sprints at you, and if he hits you, he cleans your clock. and it's very dodgeable because he always does like 3 little hops, so it's super easy to just go like, hey, and like get out of the way. But the thing is, once he starts doing that, because he always does it at the 2-minute 30-second mark, so he does it like 1 or 2 other times if other conditions are met, but he always does it at the 2-minute 30-second mark. And if you don't stop him, he will do it until the round ends. And I actually don't know what happens if there's no victor after 3 rounds, because I either beat my opponent or I was beat by my opponent. But that was frustrating. That's why I had to look that up, because I was like, well, I can dodge. Okay, I'm dodging. He's not stopping. Well, I can take a swing at him. Okay, I'm taking a swing at him and nothing's happening. And for whatever reason, I settled on the jab as like my go-to, which I think is why I won most fights by TKO. And you have to body blow him to get him out of that. So right before he punches you, you like counter punch, and that's what knocks him down. And once I saw that was what I needed to do, I was like, oh, okay. But
right.
I didn't feel like I was in a safe place to experiment, because if you screw that up, you got to go back and fight 3 other guys to get back to him again. So it was like, I was incentivized to go and research the answer instead of discover it on my own.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that the issue is that you can have poor conveyance and tight cycle time, where it's just like you're not exactly sure what you're supposed to be doing, but you can just keep trying the same 10-second iteration over and over and over again until you figure it out. Or have really, really good conveyance and a longer cycle time, like a Mega Man game, where they really tell you like how you're supposed to be doing everything. So therefore, you can have a longer cycle time because, you've got a lot of life and you can make those kinds of mistakes and all that sort of stuff, right? But to have a long cycle time and then be fighting somebody who, if you make a mistake, it's basically game over. That's just bad design. It's bad game design. But,
bad, and I don't like it. So, I mean, I don't think anybody is still placing bets at this point, but dare I ask, how did it hold up?
It held up absurdly poorly in my mind. And to be fair, we've got a number of games under our belts. We've got some where we've said, no nostalgia goggles required. This game's amazing. Go back and play it. We've done some where we've said nostalgia monocle, which is a phrase of yours, which I like, where it's like, Yeah. Some of them where you're like, you've got to have the nostalgia goggles on in order to, get anything out of this game. I think that I would say that this is a solid, you need nostalgia goggles to play this because it just does not hold up. But with the nice, thick, creamy layer of racism that they layer on top of it, I'd say don't play this game at all. It's not, in my opinion, particularly fun. And it's kind of awful. So don't play it. That's me.
just play Simon. Like it's
Simon.
It was frustrating because when I was taking notes and I was thinking about it, I was very aware of the fact that in very short bursts, I was having a good time. And when I say short bursts, I mean like a fight or two, right?
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, okay, like I may take a hit or two, but I feel like I'm getting better. I feel like I'm becoming dominant over my opponent. So that's cool to, see the growth arc. And then I would get to a fight where I just got completely destroyed. And I was like, okay, that wasn't super fun. And I don't really want to spend the time to get back there again. So I'm going to go take a break for a while and then maybe come back and play some more. So at first I was kind of like, okay, like I could see why somebody might pick this up for 5 minutes. And then the more I had to take notes on like Japanese character says super stereotypical Japanese things. Indian character had to have a magician for a father. Like once you get through like 5, 10, 15, 20 lines of notes like that, I was like, I'd really rather just play Simon.
Yeah, I'd say that you could get a similar experience with this game, sitting down with your sibling or something like that and play Simon. And then when you get it wrong, they just slap you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of
slap at Simon. Like,
wow, surprised that's not a game. I could tell, like, from Mattel. But
I don't think you have to tell little kids to hit each other.
that is true. I mean, we both have young children, and Teddy will just occasionally wander right up to me and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna hit you," and I'm like, "Well, it's good that you're 2 and unable to really put any force behind that, because if you hurt me, I'd be a little bit upset with you."
Because I had a bad day at work, and I will fight you.
And so anyway, so the moral to that story is don't play Punch Out. I haven't seen the new one. Hopefully if they did the new one right, then toned all that horrible stuff down, then maybe that's worth playing. I mean, if you really want something to play, go back and play Legend of Zelda. We should play Legend of Zelda. Are we gonna we should play Legend of Zelda.
Curtain falls.
Nah.
The music plays. The credits roll, then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. At the end of it all, gamers play what we play. Not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? We all know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure's already in sight. You're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is safe. So you're more along for the ride.